So the
Sorry.
one, oh, that's okay. The one thing that you really need to know for those of you who are in administration, support of your staff is absolutely important. Supervision is so important, particularly when your staff are trying to incorporate competency and humility. They'll need your direction. And then, of course, education. We have students, some of you may have some of our interns, and all of that, these diagrams are so terribly important. And then, of course, looking at the two concepts that we're going to be talking about today, commitment. And that commitment is not just for yourself. It's to your students, it's to your clients, and it's to the community where you practice. Of course, caring, honesty, morality, respect. Those are the core values that are projected through the NASW Code of Ethics, as well as the CSWE, EPAS, Council of Social Work Education. So, and we'll be going over some of that too. But not only will we be going over what was in the flyer, exploring this whole concept of cultural humility and cultural competence, we'll also look at basic concepts of cultural competence and cultural humility, and how each of those concepts impact the child and family systems of care. Now, what we know is that for decades, social workers have debated the merits of how similar concepts considered essential to empathic practice were cultural competence and cultural humility. And oftentimes, the two are meshed, but they're very, very different. They certainly intersect, but they are different. Both terms refer to how social workers tailor treatment and intervention to suit the individual needs of their clients and the communities in which they practice. Now, researchers have also recognized the shortcoming of cultural competency by itself. It's not enough. And it emphasizes elevating cultural humility as an indispensable skill across many disciplines and services. So that's kind of what we'll be talking about. We'll also be talking about, and I'm sure you guys are aware of this, but we'll be talking about positionality. And we'll be talking about engagement. It is my belief positionality and engagement are the underpinnings of cultural humility and cultural competence. So, you've already been asked to ensure your microphone is muted unless you want to speak. And please know, all you have to do is raise your hand if you have a question. There's no time frame. Just raise your hand and we'll deal with that. And perhaps if I can't respond, someone in our group can. So please. This is an interactive kind of training, and I want you to talk. Of course, you may use the chat, when you have a question, if you really don't want to say it out loud. And Chantalea Johns, you just met her, she'll field any or as many questions as possible. Now, she's going to have to leave at 3. And we do have another person coming in who will take up the chat at 3 o'clock. In as much as this is an interactive training, I'm going to place some folks in a breakout room. I know I can't do everyone because we have so many participants, but we'll go into a breakout room and I have some questions and I'll ask you to respond. And then when you're in your breakout room, please choose a spokesperson because you will be reporting back to our group. And then we'll have a 15-minute break at 2:30. So we'll get started. Upon completion of this training, it is my hope that you should be able to define the concept of cultural humility and cultural competence, and you should be able to distinguish the difference between each of them. You should be able to highlight the role of cultural humility and how that role plays in social work practice. You should be able to reflect on the knowledge, skills, attitudes associated with becoming culturally self-aware and valuing diversity. And finally, you should be able to have an increased awareness of unconscious cultural stereotypes and the impact these have on service recipients. So culture, what is culture? Does anybody have a definition of culture? Well, not seeing any hands. So when we look at culture, culture is the integration of our norms and our values. And one of the things I have to say about that is that there is a nurturing culture and there is a sustaining culture. And as social workers, we have to be aware of both. When you work with your client, generally, they are operating from a nurturing type of culture, the norms and the values that they operate within, which may be a little different than what the sustaining culture indicates should be. So we have to be aware of that. And we'll get into that when we talk about engagement. But that is what culture is. I don't know if you guys have heard of folkways and mores, but all of that embodies what culture is and how culture is perpetuated within the individual. Each one of you may have a different concept in terms of your nurturing culture as opposed to the sustaining culture. So often when used, it describes different ethnic or religious affiliations. That's part of the socialization and the nurturing. Let's see, a person's family or home culture will likely have distinctively different qualities and behavioral expectations than, let's say, your work culture. Again, there are all kinds of roles that we project as individuals related to the culture we find ourselves within. And when I think about that, you need to think about the various roles that you have. We all have a multitude of roles. And in each one of those roles, there is a subsystem that you're involved in, and you buy into those roles. Now, looking at cultural humility, it's really distinct from cultural competency. It's important to know the difference. And if you think about the words cultural competency, and we say this all the time, yeah, we understand that there are various groups, and we do try to understand what it is that group is all about. Impossible. I'll just give you this one little thing, a ditty. When I was a social worker, I worked in residential care with these boys. And of course, I thought I knew everything. Well, I didn't. And one of the boys said, "I have roaches in my drawer." And I thought the boy was talking about insects. And I said to the kid, "Boy, you shouldn't put food in your drawer because it attracts insects." And he just laughed. And he said, "That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a blunt." And it's like, oh, I was not culturally competent. I mean, I thought I was, and I would help him do all kinds of things, but I wasn't. And so cultural competence is constantly learning from another culture, whatever that culture is, what they think, what they know, and then moving forward. But like I said, you will never be totally culturally competent because things change. There's this whole concept about the social construction of reality. And that means norms and values and ideas and concepts are constantly changing. So we are constantly learning. And that really is what culture is all about. Now, moving from cultural competency, and we've already have it in our head, we're never going to be totally culturally competent. There's the concept of cultural humility. And that requires historical awareness. It's not enough to think about one's own values, beliefs, and social positions. In order to practice true cultural humility, a person must also be aware of and sensitive to historic realities like legacies of violence, oppression against certain groups. And because it seems as if this is going to be a very long session, it really isn't. So I'm not going to get into any depth with the realities of oppression and those kinds of things. But that is something that you need to begin to understand if you don't. You need to begin to understand the impact of particular policies on those that you'll be working with. And so just know humility is it's being aware. And When we get into engagement, we'll work on that a little further. But you see the difference between competency and humility. The major difference, and I'll reinforce this over our time together. Cultural humility is related to you and your knowledge and your willingness to learn. And it also goes on and on. It's a process. It's not an end. Just as cultural competence is not an end, but a process. And just think about what would happen when you integrate the two working with your clients. Should be very positive. Now, again, cultural competency, this concept carries meaning for child welfare professionals who study and or work with people different from themselves in terms of race, ethnicity, gender, religion, etc. What I wanted to just kind of interject a little bit is when we understand how, let's just say, a kid coming into care, what's going on with that kid? If that kid has had some form of trauma, how are we addressing that? Or are we looking at the tip of the behavior and then working with that? But what we know is that trauma is often not treated with our kids. And any kind of what I call a cat hair or a trigger can set them off. And that trigger would not be something that we recognized. So competency and humility, understanding that indeed there's a difference in working with these kids and understanding what's happening with them. I can tell you, and you're going to hear a lot about my experience, so please forgive. But when I worked in residential care and with my girls, they did not, first of all, they didn't understand this whole concept of a lady working and having a family. You know, it's like, what is that? So I had to work with them to make them understand that indeed I could do all of those things, and I wanted them to learn how to do that. Another kind of competency I had, and it worked out fairly well, but I had this little girl, and she saw her father kill her mother. And she had two big brothers. They made her mop up the blood. She didn't know what to do. But in any event, she tried, and then she filled the bathtub with water to clean the mop. When we got her, she refused to take a bath. And my staff didn't quite understand that. So I had to train them to work with her until she could begin to understand that it's okay. That's part of cultural competency, knowing what this child needed and then being able to give it to her. And I'll talk about cultural humility, and working with this same little girl. We had a Taekwondo class. I was not good. I mean, I couldn't get my hands moving properly. This kid could. So I asked her if she would take me in the basement and show me how to use my hands in this process. She was so proud. But that was my humility, that I can say to this child, help me. I need this. And she and I got our brown belts together. So again, they're all forms of this competency and humility, but you've got to begin to understand your population and work with them as necessary. And this NASW defines it very, very nicely, where it says cultural competence is the ability to respond respectfully to people of all ages, genders, all of that. But I also say, regardless of race, gender, ethnic background, we have got to work respectfully with our clients. And, you know, most of my kids where I work, they were all white, but it didn't matter. We had to learn from each other. And my humility, it built. My kids were able to say to me, I know you mean what you say. But then on the other hand, my kids went to public school. And one time a girl came home with a bus ticket because they said she was acting up. And she said to me, I didn't do that. I was not acting up. And I said to her, well, we'll check it out. The bus driver gave that kid a ticket that was for someone else. And so again, understanding competence and humility, you gotta know your clients. And then you have to be authentic when you're working with them. Those concepts will actually move you forward. Do you have any questions or statements or comments you need to make? Paula, I see you smiling. What are you thinking about?
I've done private practice for a long time,
Uh-huh.
and I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. Authenticity. I mean, the people you work with have to experience you as a real person, as a truthful person, you know, human person, but truthful, the best you
Absolutely.
can. And so I couldn't agree more.
Indeed. But you can see how there's an integration of competency and humility. And when you have that,
Right.
you can really move forward with your clients. Kamisha, would you like to say anything there about that?
No, I'm in agreement with what you're saying. I actually just had a training with some individuals. I work for the Department of Health and Human Services, and just the statement that Paula made about being human and authentic made me think about our training today and the feedback that we got as we work together as a group, and how people feel comfortable because of that.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And that's what this is all about. Now, oh dear. Okay, cultural competence. How many of you are aware of the amendment related to cultural competence in ASW? It was just amended last year. And let's see social workers should demonstrate understanding. This is from 2021. And these are the exact words. Social workers should demonstrate understanding of culture and its function in human behavior and society, recognizing the strengths that exists in all cultures. And I think we don't always do that. Social workers should demonstrate knowledge that guides practice with clients of various cultures and be able to demonstrate skills in the provision of culturally informed services that empower marginalized individuals and groups. Social workers must take action against oppression. And of course, that relates to social justice, against oppression, racism, discrimination, and inequalities, and acknowledge personal privilege. And NASW is saying personal privilege relates, social workers should demonstrate awareness and cultural humility by engaging in self-reflection. Who am I? What are my values? How are my values impacting the client? And then creating a barrier for the client to move forward. So when we talk about privilege, we've got to understand ourselves, and we have to understand our bias and self-correction. We must recognize clients as experts of their own culture. And then again, you've got to recognize who you are and your culture. And oftentimes they may clash, but you must put a pin in your beliefs while reflecting who you are and how you can interact with that client again in an authentic manner. You can even say to your client, I have not experienced that. Ask open-ended questions. And again, we are beginning to almost level the playing field. But just be aware that, NASW has that whole new set of information related to cultural competence. Now, are you guys familiar with the CSWE competencies? Anybody? Okay, Hattie. Hattie, do you know CSWE competencies? Well, maybe not.
Do I know the CSW?
See, the Council of Social Work Education has put forth 9 competencies that social workers should know. And then within each of those competencies, there are behaviors that we as social workers should actually participate in. But when we talk about cultural competency and cultural humility, there are 3 specific competencies that address those issues. And competency 1 talks about demonstrating ethical and professional behavior. Competency 2, engage diversity and difference in practice. And competency 3, advance human rights and social and economic and environmental justice. If you're not aware of CSWA, you can certainly just Google that online, and you can get their booklet on cultural competencies, but I find it very, very helpful. And again, it's just so interesting how NASW and CSWE intersect. because again, we're all talking about working with clients. Okay, when we talk about demonstrating ethical and professional behavior. Let's see. Oh, hold on a moment. Okay. Looking at ethical and professional behavior, what that actually talks about is, it talks about dress. It talks about how you work with clients. And I move it a little further to say how you address clients. Are you ethical when your client comes into your office and you greet them? You know, hello or whatever. That's ethical and professional behavior. When you pull down the NASW Code of Ethics and looking at the new code, it also talks about technology. So you're going to have some knowledge of technology when you work with your clients. But getting back to competency, one, social workers understand the value base of the profession and its ethical standards. And then as well as relevant policies, laws, and regulations that may affect practice with individuals, families, groups, etc. Social workers understand that ethics are informed by principles of human rights and apply them towards realizing social, racial, economic, and environmental justice. Social workers take measures to care for themselves professionally and personally, understanding that self-care is prominent. And I bring that up because that is another area that has been placed in the NASW Code of Ethics. And what you know is that if you do not take care of yourself, there is a great probability that you won't be able to take care of your clients. And unfortunately, I don't have a lecture on self-care, but maybe at some point I will. But you've got to take care of yourself. What do you do to take care of yourself so that you can take care of your clients? Just keep that in mind. Let's see, competency 3, 2 is coming, but 3 was important to me. Advance human rights, social and racial, economic, and environmental justice. And as you have seen, that's pretty much cultural competency and cultural humility. We have got to advocate for our clients. When we see policies that negatively impact a client, it is our job as social workers to say something and possibly do something. Looking at environmental justice, and if we look at that and look at cultural competence, generally we have to, we can indicate to our clients, I understand where you live and it's kind of difficult, but we're going to work this through together so you can get your needs met. So as you can see, and I know you all know this, but social work takes in the total environment of the individual. And in order to be competent, we have to understand that environment. And then, as much as possible, we need to try and mitigate the environment to the extent that the client is feeling safe. So I think that's about all I need. Does anybody have anything else they would like to say? You can see it's value-based. And most social workers really do not like dealing with policies and laws. But that's one of my favorite topics. You know, I used to teach policy. And one of the things that I had my students do that you can do is to take a policy, deconstruct it. What is it saying? And then reconstruct it so that it's meeting the needs of your clients. And it's really, that's not very, very difficult to do because you know your clients, you know what they need. And if you have the opportunity to deconstruct and reconstruct, think about how positive that could be for that client. So, let's see, I think that's all I need to say there. Does anyone want to say anything else related to this advancing of human rights? No, not seeing any hands, so we can go on. Now, competency 2 is very interesting because this competency engaged diversity and difference in practice. That really relates to human behavior in the social environment. And it looks at, and you have to get to this because it looks at systems in the environment, in that person's environment, and how the individual transacts those systems. And just as a case in point, school is a system. How are the clients transacting that school system? Do they go to school? Have they been placed in, I don't know, a class for special ed, and they shouldn't be there in their mind's eye? These are the kinds of things we have to look at. We gotta look at how people negotiate the systems that they're in. And it's often known as the PI, the person and environment. But it's really, really important that we understand that. And a lot of that relates to positionality that we'll get to shortly. Let's see. But I want you, to me, this is the cornerstone of social work. We got to know how these people negotiate the systems that are impacting them. And we can then begin to assist them or have them come up with a different way of handling the impact of those systems. So that's kind of what that is all about. Questions, comments, statements? Okay. Well, I'm going back into cultural competence again. But I found a definition that was put forth by, I think it was not the University of South Carolina, one university. And what they said is cultural competence is not something we achieve or fail to achieve, but rather It's a reminder to strive to know more about communities of all types within which we work or interact. That's what that is. We get as much information as we can and then move forward. Okay, I don't need to talk about that. I found this chart, and this chart talks about the journey of cultural competence. And that first little ditty that I had up in the beginning, attitudes, skills, knowledge, all of that relates to cultural competence. And you're either willing or unwilling to deal with ongoing environmental feedback, reflection, whatever is out there, you're either willing or unwilling or unable. And so you can look at this chart and think about who you are and how you deal with those issues. Another thing that I've done, but I didn't put it up, and if you want it, I can certainly give it to you. I can ask Chantalay if she could send it out to you. But I have a cultural competency survey, and you just take it for yourself. You'll know how you react to knowledge and skills. And then you can use that as a barometer to move forward. So if you want it, you can just ask her and I can get that to you. So we can look at skills which lead to the development of cultural competency. And these skills are articulate one's perspective respectively and clearly, just use language that the folks understand. So be clear. Question your own perspective. And we're going to say this a lot as it relates to competency, but particularly humility. How do you feel? What do you think? What are your values as it relates to whatever that situation is? Know it. And then question whether what you feel is compatible or incompatible with the client you're working with. Of course, you have to understand your own biases. You got to manage them. And as I said, you take your biases, put a pin in it and put it on the wall. Leave it away from what it is you're doing with your clients. Because again, standard 1 of the NASW Code of Ethics indicates that the client has a right to self-determination. And taking that and moving it forward, we don't have the right to impose our values on that client. We may not agree with the client, but the client has the right. And our job, actually, if we're going to do this whole culturally competent thing, our job is to help the client. The first thing you do is have the client prioritize whatever it is they're doing. Which one is the most important? Which one will actually provide the greatest relief Once you get that, then you have the client develop an action plan. Well, how are you going to do this? And again, as we're being very objective, we're also making the client responsible. And then we can go forward. But if we do it for the client, I can guarantee you, you're probably going to do it from your perspective rather than the client's. And oftentimes what we know is that if we indicate to the client, no, you're going to do this and we're going to talk about it and you're going to prioritize, you're going to do all of this, they begin to internalize what they're talking about. They're gaining some strength and they are more willing then to make changes than if we say, hey, this is what you do. This is how you do it. And I can guarantee you nothing is well. But get them involved. That is in keeping with cultural competence because that client is using his or her environment and making decisions about what's right and good for him or her. And then our job in terms of competence is to indicate, okay, how you getting there? So we're allowing it to happen. And I think it's more easy as a social worker to just say, here, there you go, here it is, just do it. But in the long run, we want our clients to be able to fend for themselves. We want them to be self-sufficient. Cultural competencies, cultural humility at work. What do you think, Nicole? You look kind of like, I don't know about this lady.
I'm just taking it all in. I'm a note taker, so.
Oh, okay. Well, what about you, Kayla? What do you think?
I think everything's going good. I love everything that you're saying. It leads
Okay,
well.
it's making sense to you?
Yes, it is.
Wonderful, wonderful. And again, listen, if you don't agree with me, I want you to say something because then we can talk about it. And I may learn something. I can practice humility. You can teach me some things. So indeed. But in any event, I also, in my PowerPoint, I have this list. I guess I like to make lists, but I have this list and it says there are 14 personal competencies identified by this theorist, Hogan, and you can rate yourself. So the first one, be non-judgmental. And I'm sorry, the only people I see, and I don't have names for anybody else, so I'll have to ask you, Paula, are you non-judgmental, do you think? Honestly? Unmute. Unmute your mic. I don't think I can't. Do you see the mic with the red line through it? Click on it.
Yes.
There you go.
I try to be. I
Okay.
try to be non-judgmental.
All righty.
I think it's a question of that awareness that you're talking about, this
Mhm.
awareness of your own beliefs and
Yes.
and it's interesting what this says about the tendency is to be judgmental when there's a difference.
Absolutely. And I do that. And I'm not picking on you, Paula, but I got to tell you something.
Yeah.
When you say I try to be,
Yeah.
try. You can try forever and never get there. So when what you can say is, I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Because trying to be that, I can drop a pencil on the floor and I can say, Paula, pick up that pencil, and you can try and try and try, and you give yourself some positive strokes because you tried. And I would say, Paula, either pick it up or not. Don't try. And I'm sorry?
Cassandra, and I don't know how to raise my hand. This is Addie.
Okay. Hey, Addie.
Hey,
Yes.
in response to your question, I would say for me, it depends, because I think depending on the circumstance and the people with clients, clearly I work on not being judgmental, but I am judgmental in certain things.
Okay.
And I try to be aware of what my biases are
Okay.
so that I can control it.
But Addie, listen to yourself. I try.
Yeah.
You don't know.
I
You are or you're not.
Oh, well, then I am.
There you
judgmental,
go.
because I
Okay.
don't think that anyone can totally say I am never judgmental, because we are humans and we are influenced by our culture, our values.
That's what I'm absolutely.
And so for me to say I am not a judgmental person would be like me saying I have never told a lie.
Okay. But that's actually true. And when you're able to say, I'm not non-judgmental. Remember, competency, humility, it's a process and it's ongoing. And as you said, you are aware of your biases. Work on them. We'll never be completely non-judgmental, but we can get as close as we can based on our knowledge of ourselves. And Addie, I know there's a place there that you raise your hand. Well,
there is. I just can't. I am not. Another thing, I'm not totally technology literate.
Well, join the club.
but there is a spot where you can raise your hand on Zoom.
Right. If you click, well, we'll look at it later.
Yeah, I'll try to play around. If I get cut off, I'll just come back in.
Now, I would like to.
Excuse me, Dr. Bowers.
Yes.
I think we had another, Joe, you had unmuted. Did you want to add to the conversation?
Who? I don't see any hands.
I didn't need to, but I will if I'm requested to. I mean, it's an interesting conversation. I judge people all the time. I'm hyper judgmental, but I know when there are professional situations or situations where there's a division of unequal power, I have to really catch myself and can actually do things to help myself become more humble and less judgmental. Think of my own flaws and failings in life, think of my family life, and it helps me interact with people in a more humble and appropriate way. But yeah, I go through life judging all the time, and it's a flaw I struggle with. But when it comes to professionally, or when I'm impacting others' lives in a significant way, I try to be much more aware of it.
Absolutely. And that's all we're asking, because your personal life outside of working with your clients or your constituents, that's you.
But ideally, we wouldn't be judgmental anywhere, but we're all flawed
we all
humans.
are. We all are judgmental. And but I would implore you to look at yourself as you're working with your clients and try not to be, I'm using the word, and not to be judgmental. Yeah. Difficult thing to do. And again, like I said, I use myself as examples. One time I had to I was in foster care, but they wanted me to take on an abuse case. I didn't want to do that. I'm not good at that. I understand that. But the father, he was currently in jail, but he hit this little girl so hard, little girl, that he knocked her teeth into her esophagus. And I had to go to the prison to interview him. And talking about judgmental, I was extremely judgmental. It's like, how dare he hurt a child? And he was, you know, an adult. What I since learned was that this person, or almost any person that abuses a child, there has been some form of trauma in their life that was not dealt with. There was a system in his life whereby he was probably abused, and that's what he knew. So in any event, I've gotten better at it just from having had that experience and how it made me feel. I was so angry. And I looked at the man's hand. It was huge. And I could just feel, I think, vicariously what this child was feeling. But I've gotten better over the years. So again, we have to learn to be, let me put it this way, less judgmental and more understanding. And again, we have to look underneath what that iceberg is telling us. Look underneath that, see what's there, and then help that client begin to move forward. Let's see, personalized observations. Let's move on. Who pays attention to thoughts and feelings as they're, I'm telling you mine, as they're working with clients? What are you thinking about? Let's see. I'll go back to Kamisha. Sorry, it's all I see. I don't see any
No,
names.
I was actually trying to see if I could raise my hand.
Oh, okay.
I tend to think that I'm pretty, darn it, what's the word I'm looking for? I have the ability to kind of pick up on feelings and
Empathetic.
yes, thank you. It's been a long day of training. And even if the perfect example yesterday,
Okay.
I was working. Did you have something to say?
I was going to say, in this case,
Uh-huh.
it's picking up on your thoughts.
Oh,
and feelings,
mine.
not
Okay,
being
yes.
empathetic.
Okay. So I actually do pretty well with that too. I always know when I am in a place and I need to reset.
Mhm.
Or if I'm off and I feel like I'm being knocked off my square. And if I have some physical manifestations, one is headaches. One of the biggest things I'm aware of is I forget very small things that is completely out of character for me. So when that happens and I can't recall, I know, and I just kind of try to reset at the end of the day.
Okay.
Today will be one of those days.
Okay, well, I hope you can reset in a little while. But in
Yeah.
any event, what I'm thinking though, when I talk about pay attention to thoughts and feelings, have you ever been involved with clients and they seemingly have the same problem and they present it to you and your thought is, oh Lord, here we go again, you know, and you just kind of block them out because you've heard it so many times. Does that ever happen?
Trying to think, I can't say because I'm not working directly with clients
Okay,
at
but
this
even
point,
in
but it
any
has,
in any situation,
for
it's
sure,
almost
yes,
like it's like secondary trauma to
yes,
the
actually,
ex yeah, to
I
the
can think of one
extent.
person in particular, yes,
Okay,
because
it-
there's a pattern of behavior, so when
that's
it
exactly right.
happens, I have had that, like,
Yes.
not today, I'm not really in the mood, but
Okay, well,
yes.
we're just talking generally. I know you got
Yeah.
to reset in a little while, but
Oh,
in
no,
any
no,
event,
I'm saying that's my response to the pattern, and
oh,
then,
okay.
yes,
Yeah, but what I know is that quite frequently we will have clients, even if it's just one client, and they come in and they tell you the same thing over and over, and you get tired of it. And we have to pay attention to that. Because when you get tired of it, it really is a form of secondary trauma. So you've got to do some self-care, but you also have to recognize that it is there so that you don't put up a barrier to prevent you from working with your client. Again, learning who you are, becoming competent within yourself, and then demonstrating humility. Let's say, excuse me, I don't know if this one will work. Can anybody keep a sense of humor when everything else is going nuts around you? What about you, Nicole? How do you handle that? Or do you have it?
No, I definitely work on that a lot. And I am
Mhm.
I'm a very positive person. So even if like I personally am the one having a problem and I'm sharing some negativity, I'm able to quickly like flip it back around. And sometimes it's inappropriate jokes.
Oh,
Not
okay.
like dirty jokes, but
No, no,
like,
I hear you. I hear you.
venting or, just being able to break it down with my coworkers. But I do try to keep a sense of humor because I feel like in child welfare, it's a very heavy field.
Oh,
And
indeed.
if you can't do that, you are going to drown.
Yeah, you're going to burn out.
Mhm.
You're going to experience secondary trauma,
Absolutely.
and then you'll be good to absolutely no one, not
Mhm.
even yourself. And again, with that, if you don't try to maintain, not try, if you don't maintain that sense of humor, then even your personal life suffers. So,
And
indeed, but
also balancing that though, because I think that we also see a lot of things that are horrible. We have a
oh,
situation been dealing with recently with a foster child who's been self-cutting a lot, and it's so easy to just we found ourselves in a group of supervisors joking about it because it was just so heavy, and you have to balance that because you still have to keep a heart.
that's very true. But I can say
Yeah.
in some instances like that, you got to begin to look at self-care.
Mhm.
And when you have that group of supervisors that you guys are, interacting with on this particular subject, then I'm not quite sure that humor in this case is the best thing, but you can
Absolutely.
support each other.
Mhm.
If I were in your group, I would say, okay, Nicole, I know that this feels bad. I know it's frustrating. Let's see what else we can come up with to help move this child along. Support. Remember that
Right.
first, it's not, we've got to support each other, but we have to do it in a way that is positive and effective. And I do believe that this, child welfare it is heavy. Like I said, with my little girl who saw her father kill her mother. That's heavy. But somehow or other, again, that whole competency piece. And then your humility piece saying, gosh, I can't stand this. What am I going to do? that's growth. And so think of it that way. But in any event, if you want this PowerPoint, that's on there and you can take your test and move forward with that. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, I always go the wrong way. Sorry. I wanted to put this up for you in the event that you wanted to take a cultural competence self-test. You can do it this way too. And it'll be right there in the PowerPoint. Now, have you all heard the hidden bias? That's really considered, in my mind's eye, the implicit bias. Do you all know what that is? You're aware of it. Kayla, do you know implicit bias?
I know a little bit of it, but I would
Oh.
like just some more clarity. Just a little
Okay,
bit.
what do you know? And then I can clear some stuff up for you.
Yeah, I was just in a training yesterday about it.
Oh,
So
okay.
yes, I took a little bit of note. I know it's just being aware of your biases that you have. And
Okay. What's very, very interesting about implicit bias is that generally speaking, it's in your subconscious. That's why it's implicit. You almost don't know it's there. And have you ever had a time when you said something or did something and you said, why did I do that? Did you ever do anything like that, Kayla?
yes, but not that I can recall it, but it's top of my
Okay,
head
but
right
I
now.
said that just to show you a point.
Yeah.
Implicit biases always manifest in behavior. So again, you've got to look at your behavior and it will begin to show you what your biases are. That's what implicit bias is all about. You don't see it, but you
there.
act on it.
Yeah.
And not only that it's there, but it's very active.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about self-reflection, looking at those biases and really determining what's going on with you. So that's kind of how that is. And you can click on this website at some point and see how that works. Andrea Sargente.
Yep. Hi, Dr. Bowers. I
Hi.
wanted to say that just a lot of what you're saying, it just brings me back to when I was in school. I did go to Wayne State, got my bachelor's and master's there. It reminds me of the process recordings and why those were so important, because it's a self-reflecting tool, you know, after you meet with somebody, to kind of go back through and take stock as to, okay, maybe I was feeling this way. It might give you a deeper look into what your implicit biases might be and exploring why you were feeling a certain way and, you know, why you were affected.
Indeed. And are you a supervisor now, Andrea?
I was, but now I'm just currently, and I'm not working in the child welfare field. I did work at Turning Point, and I did work with survivors, and I worked with children there. So I'm currently working with the elderly.
Okay. You can use those same skills.
Yep.
Because you almost have to. If we talk about older adults and the implicit biases we have about older adults, it's unbelievable.
Oh yeah, like the generational biases.
Absolutely.
And just the thing.
I'm saying that as long as you're aware, if you can do a process recording and write down the biases you have, then you would be better served to work with the older adults.
Yes, moving
So,
forward.
absolutely. And I know, we worked with older adults, and my students, I asked them this question. I guess I embarrassed them. I don't know. Should older adults have sex? You
Of course they should.
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. You should have seen their faces.
They're like,
It's like,
"Ew."
oh, yuck. So they have those biases.
Yes.
And having those biases prevent them from working more effectively with their
Yes.
clients. That's all I'm
Yes.
saying, but it is a bias. They think old people are slow and all kinds of things, but
Yeah.
it needs to be cleared up. And if you're working in the older adult nursing home or whatever situation,
Mhm.
try to I keep saying it, make people aware of their biases, and you might even be able to observe their biases
Mhm.
and then help them to change that behavior, because it's only hurting, not physically, but it's hurting the older adult.
Mhm. It's creating barriers. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes. So anyway, that is that. Okay. Well, moving on to cultural humility, I think we have about 10 minutes before our break. So we'll do this. Once I finish cultural humility, we'll go on a break and then come back and complete this. But anyway, you already know what it is, but I'm going to tell you again. Cultural humility entails acknowledging differences and positioning ourselves as people interested in learning and understanding. And that's kind of all we've been talking about here. Learning and understanding. Cultural humility is particularly relevant to a trauma-informed, human rights-based approach to social work practice. And I guess you know by now, I'm very interested in trauma. I'm extremely interested in trauma in children. And what I know is that regardless of the age group that you're working with, we have got to begin to understand if indeed some kind of trauma occurred in their childhood that was never addressed. Because what we know is that it's going to reactivate, it's going to show itself in all kinds of forms. So if we don't recognize it, we can't deal with it. We can't learn and help the client learn from it. So trauma is so important to know and understand. Now, cultural humility involves an ongoing process of self-exploration. We've already talked about that, but I'm going to keep saying it over and over again because I want you to internalize it. Cultural humility is also self-critique. Can you criticize yourself? Let's see. Cultural humility is to work with another person with the intention of honoring their beliefs, their customs, and their values. And as Addie was saying earlier, that she just did not practice a lot of the behaviors, but I honored that because that is what she believed. Now, Addie, you want to come back in? Oh dear, I don't know where she went. But in any event, you've got to honor.
Okay.
Okay, remember, what was that first thing, non-judgmental? And you said, no, I am.
Yes.
And I'm saying that cultural humility would be to accept your customs, your beliefs and values. And I hope I did that. I think I did, but that's what we have to do, even though they're not what we believe. It is what you believe.
Right.
And once we know that, accepting that from them is what it is. That's not changing who you are, but it's keeping it's keeping the client in the fore. It's their self-determination. It's their knowledge. They know more about their life than we do. So that's kind of what that's all about.
So, Cassandra, question.
Yes.
So where does the term cultural responsiveness fit in with cultural competence and cultural humility?
Okay, what do you, before I answer, what do you think? Look at the word. What does it tell you?
Well, I know that what we say or have said in the past when we were doing training through the NRC that no one ever actually becomes, quote, culturally competent.
That's true.
That you learn how to respond in a cultural competency, cultural competent manner to diverse situations, of course, based on your training and understanding and level of skill, et cetera, et cetera. And so I see cultural responsiveness being kind of in between cultural competency and cultural humility.
Okay, and the way I see it, when I'm culturally responsive, let's just say that we're working with a child or a family from a war-torn country. They're here. And as we're working, they hear airplanes flying over and they duck. My response to them would be, I can see that you're still feeling the effects of the country, the war that you left from your country. Now, to me, that's being culturally responsive. And I could also say, I don't know what that's like. And perhaps you would like to talk about it. But that's being responsive. You know, I'm acknowledging that there is some behavior going on that I don't necessarily know about, but I'm certainly willing to find out more. How does that sound to you? Because that's what I do, but what do you think?
Sounds good to me.
But that, don't you think that is being culturally responsive? Because again, you're looking at where that person has been. That pie, the person and environment, what is that environment like? And how do they react to that environment? And even like a kid hating school, you could be culturally responsive by saying, oh, I can understand, or yeah, I can understand your reluctance for going to school, being placed in a lower grade. I understand that. However, I would then add a little caveat by saying, well, are you able to do the work in a higher class, a higher level class? And then we would begin to talk about it. And I would venture to say that that kid would then come to understand him or herself and their abilities. I also would say that if that child can demonstrate that they are capable, then it's my job to see what I could do to move him to another grade. All of that is, in my mind's eye, cultural responsiveness. Paula, do you have anything to say about that concept?
You know, Cassandra, I agree with you. I think the thing that is coming to mind for me is I've gone back a little bit to what, you know, when you were talking about trauma. And one of the things I've learned, especially with a lot of the research that's been done around trauma in recent years, is that, you know, we have that fight or flight syndrome.
That's right.
But what we also understand now is that there's a third option, and that option is freeze.
Yes,
That
yes.
when we're traumatized, at least sometimes we freeze because we can't fight and we can't flee.
That's right.
And that's often true for children.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So sometimes
true for adults too.
True for adults as well.
Absolutely.
But I think sometimes a person is so disconnected from the trauma that what you see is the freeze, but you don't understand what it's about.
Exactly. And
Do you know what I
that's
mean?
when, yeah, and that's when I talk about this whole concept of cat hairs. The person who freezes, there's a trigger. There's some kind of cat hair that tickled their nose or whatever,
Right.
and they can go no further. And oftentimes we will see that and respond to the behavior rather than the etiology of that behavior, which would then help that person move forward.
Right.
Indeed. But
Exactly.
again, all of that is responsive competence.
Right.
So we got, it's knowing, and then moving, helping to move that client forward.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right. I was just going to say, sometimes you're right. Sometimes you're responding to the hair,
That's
not to the
right.
trauma, because you can't access that. You don't have the story yet.
Right.
You
And
don't
not
know.
only that, but it doesn't look like trauma to you.
Right.
It could be somebody blowing a bubble. Who knows?
Right.
And that to me is, you know, that just a nothing. But to that person,
right,
it's devastating. So
right.
With that, I think it's what? 2:30? What time is it?
Yep, it's 2:34 here in Michigan.
Oh, okay. I'm asking, I live in Arizona. So anyway, it's only 12:30 here, but please take a break. I'm going to be culturally responsive. Take a break, drink some water, and come back renewed to get the rest of this information. So I'll see you in 15 minutes, or at least a quarter of. That'll do it. Oh. Chantalea, how's it going?
Going good, thank you.
Okay, I just, you know, I need that kind of feedback. I need that responsive confidence. So anyway, oh Lord,
Yeah, I think the engagement is coming along. So
I'm
happy to see
having,
that.
I don't know if you can tell it, but I'm having a good time. I hope I can get through all this stuff. But anyway, I gotta take a break because, you know, I gotta
Yes,
go.
right.
I'll
Take
be
you a
back.
break. Yes. Mhm. Dr. Bowers, you're mute. I'll go ahead. There you go.
Oh, there. Well, Paula, while we're waiting for others to come in, what are you thinking? How is this going for you?
I've got a cookie in my mouth.
Understood.
I think it's really good. I attended one of your talks a couple of years ago.
On trauma?
I'm trying to remember. I got to go back and look at my notes, but I got a lot from that. And then, so I was eager to join
Wonderful.
this one as well.
Okay, well, good.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, I think it's really good. It's just they're all good concepts to think about and digest more and
use
more. And
yes, indeed.
So I'm enjoying it. It really, I find it quite helpful. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm enjoying it too. I guess you can tell, I like this kind of thing.
Well, and I was thinking, you really have a nice style of not only presenting material, but the engagement and the, real life, instances. And
yes,
it makes it immediate and real. And
oh, good. And hopefully it'll make it clearer regarding the concepts that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because goodness, I've been in the child welfare field for 35, 40 years, something like that, a long time.
I know. Yeah. I don't think I'd seen your bio before, but the bio that was with this is you've been in a lot of different aspects.
Yeah, I've done a lot of things, but I'll tell you, to be honest with you, the reason I got my PhD was that a lot of the people that I worked with, they didn't know how to work with kids. And that upset me a lot.
Okay.
And so I said, if I got a PhD, then I could teach. And I could teach more people how to do things correctly, or at least in my mind's eye, correctly. Yeah. And that's why I did what I did. It's so important to me. Kids are so important.
Well, it's not really a cliche to say they are our future.
They are.
They really are our future.
But if we don't do something quickly, we're going to have a very, very bleak future. So again, this is what I do. I've done it for years, and I'm still enjoying it. I'm doing it on a different level, but I'm enjoying it.
It's a blessing, isn't it?
I think so.
To really enjoy and find meaning in your work. And
yeah. And when I think of kids, one of my colleagues, she had a baby picture of one of her nephews. And whenever I was feeling a little down, I'd go to her office, I'd look at that picture, and I would smile. I would just smile because they kind of calmed you down or something.
I don't know, it takes you back to what's important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Nicole, we only have a moment or two, but how is this going for you, this session? And just be honest, it doesn't,
No, I agree. I think you're very engaging. I like that you involve us and ask us questions and the examples. And this is a topic I've really been trying to dig into. My agency itself is really looking at the disproportionality and the disparity. And so we have really, me myself, it touches me too. So I've really been trying to just eat up any training I can find.
Okay. And I'm hoping that this is helpful to you.
No, absolutely.
Okay. Well, it is a quarter of, and so we might as well begin. The next thing I have is a learning activity. And I'm going to leave this up, but I want you all take a few moments to consider what social work and social justice means to you. And as you're doing that, think about cultural competence and cultural humility. Think about the lack of voice that most of our clients have. And then let's see what you come up with. So just, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes. Can you see the PowerPoint? Okay.
Yes, we can
Okay.
see it.
Good. Okay. And you know that social justice is the bedrock of our values, the NASW values. Got about 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll see what people came up with. And actually, you can just talk. If people are talking over, I'll ask one to stop. But again, I can't see all of you who are here. So let's just chat. Okay, Jacqueline, what did you come up with?
For what social work means to me, a couple things that came to mind are,
Well, it's really social work and social justice.
right.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go
So
ahead.
yeah, for social work, I feel like, I mean, they're definitely related. Social work and social justice kind of just makes me think of like working with people, walking alongside them and considering everything that they've been through, considering everything that they, may be facing like institutionally, and not just telling people what to do differently, but walking alongside them, working with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And just one other question that I didn't, and you answered it, but as all of this relates to cultural competence and cultural humility.
Right. Yeah, I think, I mean, I think in order to continue working towards social justice, you know, we're also considering cultural differences and all of that.
Absolutely, yes. Okay.
So it's all interrelated for sure.
Yes. Did you learn anything about yourself as you were just responding to that question?
Nothing jumped
Not
out
really.
that was
Okay.
new. I think it was interesting that all the different questions that you had put on the slide, like who's involved, what are they doing? Do you see yourself as this person? I think was interesting to think about. And I think I do see myself as that person. And it just depends on like the context and different things like that. But yeah, and I think I have thought about this kind of before, so I wouldn't say anything came up that was like super new for me, but
Wonderful.
It's good to think about.
Absolutely. Okay, Joe, what did you write down, if anything?
I wrote down a couple things. One is that I'm often placed in a position of responsibility to have big impact on other people. And people trust me to handle that responsibility. And sometimes it's a big responsibility. The world's an unfair place. The world is not always just, and people need advocates. We are in a field where we are called to advocate for others and guide others that are in need.
Yes. Okay.
And humility is the doorway to being a good public servant.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, good. What about you, Nicole?
I wrote down just a series of words, and really the question that stood out to me, it asked about who else is involved, and everybody. I think everybody is involved. Action, moving forward, coming alongside, helping, networking, engaging. I also noted, that could be policy change, so that can involve, your neighbor, your child, all the way up to, the government and lawmakers. But I think every single person has a role in that.
Okay, and do you see the integration of humility and competency?
Yeah.
As it relates to this question? Okay.
Yes, because in social work, you have to have that competence and that awareness, but the humility moves into that action and decision making as to how we're going to work with other people, how we're going to change laws and policies and move forward as a whole.
Yeah, and again, when I see that, I think about some of the policies like the Supreme Court. And this is just an aside, but the Supreme Court has indicated that Alabama can maintain gerrymandering rules. The Supreme Court. And that is not social justice. And how are we going to negotiate and navigate that in terms of competence and humility? It's certainly a policy thing, but what I know is that people of color, any people of color, will have a negative residual effect as a result, as the highest court in the land saying, it's okay, do your thing, Alabama. But anyway, let's see, Paula, what'd you write?
I actually do clinical social work. I'm a psychotherapist. So, and I think my sense generally, but I'm a licensed social worker, and those two go together for me, because it really feels to me, whether you're talking about helping someone deal with the wounds that they have,
yes,
have cost them function and joy in their life is really related to also the wounds in our culture, like racism, like
Yes.
sexism,
All of the isms.
all the
Yes.
isms,
Yes.
that also have cost people, all of us, the same thing. It caused injury and has kept us from having our birthright to feel good and productive and joyful in our lives. So that's the social justice and social work, I think, are at their best, at the very best, one and the same.
Absolutely. And I will ask just the group at large, does anyone else care to share what they wrote? Well, hopefully they're not having troubles learning how to raise their hand. But if not, then we're going to move on. But I thought it was important to look at this activity from the perspective of humility and competence, to the extent that we have got to begin to understand the history of the people that we're working with. We know that some policies are developed to really create harm, like the Supreme Court finding yesterday. And what do we do as social workers to help clients work that through? Or do we agree with the Supreme Court? I do know that in Michigan, at least when I was there was a petition to stop gerrymandering, and I think it became a law. So we've got to begin to look at who we are and how we can mitigate all of these policies and injustices to ensure social justice occurs with our clients. Now, what I'm going to do, the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to have to get out of here, unless I have to get out of our PowerPoint so I can go to the breakout rooms. And I'm going to put, well, some people will be placed in the breakout rooms, and then I'll come back to the exercise so people can see what they need to do. So I'll be back in a moment or two. Okay. Let me see, breakout rooms. Let's see what we've got here. I think we'll have maybe 5. And I will assign people just based on the names I see. Okay. All right, so in breakout room, Amanda Worthington. And you'll have to give me a moment because I got to write the names down. You will be in breakout room 1. Let's see. Oh, there she is. Okay, Anastasia Vaughn. You're also in breakout room 1. Ashley Curtis, you're in 1. B, you're in 1. And Becca Cuff, you're in 1. Okay, breakout room 2. Let's see here. Addie Williams, Andrea Sargente, Erin Manny, Brittany Town, and Caleb McCarrick. You're in 2. And breakout, actually, we're only going to have 3 breakout rooms because I only have 3 assignments. So breakout room 3. Let's see. Janelle Weber, Kamisha Bradley, Casey Holtz, Linda, and all I have is Linda, so maybe we only have 1 Linda, and Lindsay Johnson. Now, I will meet you all in your rooms. What you got to do, if you see your name, just join. And then I will be in to let you know what your assignment will be. You will have 15 minutes to ponder the assignment. Remember to choose a spokesperson to reflect what you talked about in your rooms. So I'm going to open the rooms now, and please sign in. And for those of you who are not in rooms, please listen to what they're saying so that you can respond to what they're saying. And everybody's not joined yet, so. Okay, let's see. Well, looks like most people are there. All righty, I will be in your room in, oh dear, there's several people placed in rooms that I didn't assign, but that's okay. What I'm gonna do now is join your room. So, breakout room 1. Hold on.
Okay, I tried to put folks in rooms, so hopefully you've gotten the notification. Some folks wasn't assigned, so I just went ahead and assigned you all some rooms. Paula, did you get yours?
No, am I supposed to be somewhere?
Yeah, you're in room 2.
Okay.
Let me see if I can get it to.
Okay.
Takesha?
Yes, ma'am. I just saw the the notice for the breakout rooms. It just popped up on the app, so I can see it now.
Okay. Okay. So, oh, let me see. Hey, Haiti, let me put you in a room. Let's see, or are you already assigned one? Oh, okay, she's in a room.
All righty. Hopefully that, I don't know. It just popped up on the screen here, so I see it now.
Okay.
I'm gonna maybe pause recording while nobody's in the main room.
Okay, yeah, and I better get